Chapter 3, Part 1. Marty. Thank God he'd fallen asleep. Mid-sentence, he just passed out. But I guess that happens as men get older. My granddaddy randomly fell asleep places too. As I walked toward the Minos History Museum, the box felt heavy beneath my coat. Rex Carlberg, one of the archivists, he was an old friend of mine from grammar school. He was always begging me to stop by his new job and see all the antiquities. I bet he'd be just thrilled with this stupid box. I could unload the thing for a tidy profit and get the boss back on track. I needed his know-how, his connections, and a paycheck if I was ever going to find charity. I marched through the museum doors like a woman on a mission. When asked to buy a ticket, I informed them I was here to see Rex. If they'd please fetch him for me, I'd be ever so grateful. The woman looked at me, suspicious, but phoned down to the archives. Rex will be up in a minute. You may sit there and wait, she said, pointing to a bench across from her booth. I went to take a seat, but before my legs could even brush the bench, Rex was running to me, waving like a madman. Marty, I'm so glad you finally came. We just got a new mummy. I think it's a fake, but Claude thinks it's real. We're just waiting for the radiocarbon dating to come back. Have you heard of radiocarbon dating? It's the latest technology, discovered just a year ago by Willard Libby. It allows us to date things. It's good to see you, Rex, I interrupted him. He had a terrible habit of rambling, and I didn't have time for it today. I'd love to see your mummy some other time. Today, I've brought you a find. Want you to take a look and tell me what the museum would pay for it. His face darkened a bit. I could tell I'd hurt his feelings. Oh, sure. I suppose. My office is this way, he said. If you're quick, we can go take a look at that mummy, I conceded. It was only fair. One good turn deserves another. His smile returned, and I followed him behind a painting of the underground labyrinth that had earned our city its name. The labyrinth was discovered in 1785 by a farmer whose plow and oxen plummeted to their deaths when part of the roof caved in. Its origins are still widely debated, since the architecture and design have a very Roman feel. Still, no other evidence of who created it has been found. No tools, pottery, bones. Just the labyrinth. Rex's office was small and stacked floor to ceiling with books and files. If this gig with Demetri fell through, I might be able to pick up some side work here getting Rex organized. Men are hopeless when it comes to getting things in order. All right, Marty, Rex said. What do you have for me? This, I said, pulling the box from beneath my coat. Rex uncharacteristically snatched it from my hands and began looking it over with great zeal. Where did you get this? He asked. From a friend, I said. Is this friend where you have it? He asked me. I wanted to be offended, but I knew I had a particular, slightly deserved reputation in the old neighborhood, so I let it slide. I looked at my watch. By now? Probably. Trust me, he wants rid of this thing. He was going to dump it in the bay, but I thought here might be a more suitable place for it. Well, I have to examine it further, but if this is what I think it is, you have quite the find here, he said. His focus was on the box, though. He was reading the raised lettering around the outside. Aha! He said, suddenly putting the box on his desk and pressing on two of the symbols simultaneously. The labyrinth on the top shot backward, and a new maze was pushed to the top. What in the hell? I asked. Rex's face was glowing with delight.
Demetri. I'd been scouring the streets for what felt like hours. Hadn't caught so much as a glimpse of Martina. It was a fool's errand, I knew. I didn't know where she was going. Didn't know how she got there. Hell, I barely knew the kid outside of her determination in getting me to teach her how to sleuth properly. And just from my short time with her, she was impulsive, stubborn, and naive. A recipe for disaster in this kind of work. You can't take anything at face value. I remember an old saying from when I first started. Don't believe anything you see, and less of what you hear. I haven't heard a more precise philosophy. It served me well. A magician will never want you to look away from where he's directing you, after all. And that's the same with anyone who has a particular agenda, for good or ill. I pulled off the road and parked. Rubbing my hands in my eyes, I was still tired. Exhausted would be more accurate. I did need sleep. I'm not going to be worth much if my head isn't straight, much less my vision, I thought. I took a quick look around, trying to get my bearings. Just go home, worry about this after a bit of shut-eye. I nodded. That's when I saw something that struck a chord. On the corner of the block, a couple of figures stood in what looked like robes. Flashes of that dream kicked around my mind. I rubbed my eyes and looked again through the rain. Ponchos. Hooded ponchos. Folks just trying to stay dry. Definitely a clear sign for me to call it a day. Thinking on it, I'm not even sure what today is anymore, or even what time for that matter. I took a quick look at my watch. Too late to be early, but only by a little. I pulled back onto the road and began the winding journey back home. It was the one thing my ex left me. My home. A little place on the eastern outskirts of Minos. It was a generational home, handed down to the first son since we got here. It was a farmstead that shrunk with the times, until all that remained was the house and a little plot of land. A couple of acres if you're generous. It wasn't fancy, but it was home. My little piece of peace. It was a little out of the way, which didn't bother me. It's nice to get out of the noise of the city. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I pulled up alongside the white painted porch and shut the car off. Exiting the car, I did a quick once-over of the property. Even in my exhausted state, wouldn't do to let the caution drift in the breeze. If those lunatics found out I had anything to do with their artifact, they'd come looking. Even if it was on the low-end chance of happening, I'd prefer to bet safe. Didn't see anything that stuck out. So far, so good. I shook some of the rain off me as I climbed the creaking steps to the front door. It was good to be home. I slid my key in the deadbolt and heard it click before I pushed the door open. The house was dark. Always seemed to be these days. Not that it had much life in her too long ago, but it was never dark. I chuckled dryly as I shook off my coat and hung it and my hat near the door. I double-checked the lock before making my way to my liquor cabinet. I pulled out a bottle of whiskey and a glass and poured myself a nightcap. I sipped at it as I sat, slipping my shoes off. I looked around the place, taking another sip. It was pretty sparse for furnishing these days. Hadn't had the motivation to put more into it than what was necessary after she took what she could fit in a moving truck. Dames of trouble, that's for certain. I continued sipping my drink as memories floated past my eyes. Good times and bad. C'est la vie. I topped off my drink before heading to the bedroom. Sparse living, you might call it. A bed, dresser, nightstand with a lamp, a chair, and a little radio off in the corner that I had forgotten to turn off. It was playing some smooth tune. Not a bad life. I loosened my tie and threw it on the dresser before finishing my drink and setting the glass on my nightstand. I didn't bother with the rest of my clothes as I crawled into bed, planting my head firmly on my feather pillow. I could feel my exhaustion taking over. This was probably the best damn idea I'd had all day. I started to close my eyes, feeling them get heavy, the lids feeling like they had weights on them. And right before I fell into a dead sleep, a thought occurred to me. Had I left my radio on?
Marty. I cover my ears, but I can't drown out the sound. A woman's voice chants strange, haunting words I don't recognize. It sounds like gibberish, but it means something. Or I think it does. My heart rails against my chest. It feels like it's trying to break through my ribs. Clouds of steam escape my mouth as I endeavor to catch my breath. My legs tremble, barely able to hold my weight. This is fear. I can feel something coming, something big. It's gonna swallow me like Jonah. Its shadow falls over me, and I'm thrown into the belly of the beast. My name is everywhere, a million whispers swarming me, stinging me with its syllables. Gray stone walls flash before my eyes. They twist and writhe in my wake. Every turn only produces another segment of the wall, another small path. Do I go left or right? How the hell do I get out of here? Marty! I hear a different voice calling out to me, but it sounds so far away, like an echo of an echo. I turn right and right again, keeping my hand on the wall. There must be a way out. Marty! Wake up, damn you! I hear the voice again, closer this time. My cheek stings and swells, and the maze is gone when I blink. Rex is standing in front of me, looking horrified. What the hell was that? He asks. Didn't you hear it? Didn't you see it? I ask, looking around frantically. It was just here. Or I was just there. Something just happened. I didn't see or hear anything. You said what the hell and then started screaming bloody murder. Christ, I'm surprised half the museum isn't here already. Rex's office door flew open as if on cue, and a group of men charged in looking ready to brawl. I was trying to regain my composure. The last thing I needed was this damsel in distress bullshit. Rex, what's going on here? The husky man leading the invasion asked. Whoops, silly me, I lie. When that box shot the lid backward, it scared the life right out of me. You know how women are. I'm just a bit jumpy is all. Jesus, lady, the man replied. You nearly gave us all a heart attack. You sure you're all right? Another one of the gents asked, giving Rex a suspicious look. Right as rain, I assure you, I said using my most charming smile. Sure does my heart good to see these strong, handsome men come to my rescue. Why, I'm flattered. I looked down, attempting to be demure. Well, I suppose it's all right, he said, looking harshly at Rex. Try not to scare the ladies next time, kid. Oh, don't be too harsh on him, Mr. I asked the stern-looking man. Mr. Tomlinson, he said and smiled at me. Mr. Tomlinson, you really must forgive Rex. I'm such a goose. Here he is doing me a favor and I scream my silly little head off. I'm afraid I'm too faint-hearted to see what else he finds in that old puzzle box. Rex, you give me a call when you have more information on it, won't you? You're such a dear. Mr. Tomlinson will see me out, I said, lacing my arm confidently for Mr. Tomlinson's. Poor Rex. He looked just beside himself. He wasn't buying any of this for a second, but he was front enough to keep it to himself. I waved at him as my escort led me back to the entrance. I'd have to give him a little portion of whatever the museum would offer for the thing, and honestly, I wasn't sorry to see the backside of it. Whatever that was, I was not interested in a repeat occurrence. I still felt off-kilter and uneasy. One thing was for sure, I needed to find Demetri. He knew more about the thing than I did and might have an explanation. Plus, he would be massively impressed with the ingenious way I'd disposed of the box. I was getting it out of our hands and into a guarded building, and getting us paid for the trouble. It was all very neat and tidy. When I arrived back at the office, the boss was nowhere to be seen. There was a cigarette still smoking in the ashtray, so he hadn't been gone long. I looked at my watch. It was 4:30. He was probably headed home. I rummaged around his desk until I found a piece of mail addressed to him that didn't match the address for the office. It was on County Road 121, so it was way out in the boonies. I still had some pocket money, so I hailed a cab and gave him the address. It was a long ride, and when I arrived, the boss's car still wasn't there. When I approached the door, it was locked, so I tried all the keys I'd made copies of yesterday. He'd had a few lying around, and it never hurt to be able to get in places, especially when it was raining like it was. Unsurprisingly, I got in quickly and relocked the door behind me. Now I just needed to wait for the boss to get home. I turned on the radio I found in what I assumed was his bedroom and gave myself a tour. As I was meandering around, I heard a scraping at the door. The familiar sounds of a locked door being picked filled my ears. I snuck into the bedroom as quietly as possible and tucked myself under the bed, just in time for the door to creak open.
Demetri. Ford wants to get away, I murmured to myself, moving through a stone passageway. Forward twice to gain some ground. I continued trance-like. Backwards once to ward them off. Backwards twice to throw them off. Left to dodge them, right to elude them. My feet followed my words, practiced steps through the cold stone, taking turn after turn. Left to confuse them, and right to find your way. Bound to the ground, above the only way. My feet stopped, my vision blurred before a great light. I lifted my hand to shield my eyes as my feet wouldn't stop moving. I hear a million little echoes of millions of voices. Marty, they say. The light intensifies, blinding me. I wake up, the sun glaring in my eyes through the window. I groan as I try to shield myself from the light. I rolled over. That damn dream again. I'd had it so often it wasn't anything new. Irritating mostly. Always the same thing. Cold stone walls, me unable to do anything but follow the same footsteps I'd taken thousands of times before. Yawning and stretching, I got out of bed. I needed the rest. My head felt clearer than it had in a long time, though I still needed something strong to get me going. I grabbed the empty glass on my nightstand and made my way out to the parlor. filling the glass a couple of fingers and downing it just as quick. The burn shook my system and got the blood flowing proper. I stretched and sat the glass down. Time to greet the day, I thought, and chuckled. Who am I kidding? With what the kid pulled? Wait. The dream. I thought back on it momentarily. The voices. They hadn't been there before. That was new. Why the change? I pondered as I cleaned myself and got a fresh change of clothes. As I was exiting my bedroom lost in thought, that's when I noticed it. My mother's rug was pushed up on the corner nearest the bedroom. I hadn't done that. Squatting down to pull it back into place, I noticed something else. Blood. A few drops of it dried on the hardwood floor. Glancing around the room, my eyes fell on the only other thing out of place. A slip of paper. Lying on the ground slid under my front door. That definitely wasn't there last night, I thought. The handwriting was blocky and nondescript. Not something any of my spooks would have left me. Demetri. The walls of the maze have begun to shake. A seeker's snare. The first gate has been opened. The game has begun. Death awaits within. We need to speak. You know where to find me. Yours as always, M. What fresh insanity was this? Who was this M? Yours as always? Did I know the person? And what kind of riddly nonsense were they spouting? Almost like they got high on their own words. Folding the paper, I pocketed it before picking up Fiona from my nightstand and did a once-over of the house just to make sure there wasn't any surprises. Finding none, I grabbed my coat and hat. I double-checked all my locks before getting into the old gal and rumbled towards the office. Hopefully, the kid like clockwork would be there waiting for me. Upon arrival, this was unfortunately not the case. The door was still locked. No Martina in sight. What was in sight, though, was another piece of paper, sitting right inside the door. Same handwriting. Picking it up, I glanced quickly around the office. Nothing more out of place, thankfully. Demetri. I knew you'd come here first. I'm afraid your damsel has found herself misplaced. We need to speak. The key to the second gate is tears, and the third blood. I await our meeting, Minos' tomb, if you have forgotten. Yours as always, M. What the hell? I shook my head. Minos' tomb? That old abandoned mine out east of town? I hadn't been there in years. And not with anyone I remember. I rushed back out to my car and began the trek east. The mine sat some distance from town. It was one of the earlier incarnations of the Etson's mining industry. The thing had been tapped dry some time ago, supposedly, and now was a relic of the past. Kids would come up here to drink or see who's brave enough to explore the cave. The SOC had set themselves up in there at one point in time as well. A bit of nasty business later, and they were scattered to the winds once again. That was one of my earlier gigs, when I was just a beat cop. Mostly fresh-faced, but a front row seat to what the Seekers were capable of. I was there for the cleanup. Nasty business. I still couldn't puzzle out who this M person could be. It honestly didn't make much sense. No one whose name started with M had even accompanied me up there at any point in time, as far as I knew. Probably just some spook or wacko trying to rattle me is what I finally decided. I had to park the old gal some distance away, as she wouldn't make it up the muddy pass. I checked Fiona and made sure she was hot. Wouldn't do to pull her cold if things went sideways. Shortly after, I was trudging up the hill towards the mine. The rain made the going soggy, and as I came within sight of the mine entrance, I saw a figure standing with an umbrella, staring into the mine. I approached cautiously. Time to find out what game this M was playing.
Welcome to Dueling Pens. I'm Sammy Jo.
I'm Andy.
And we are so excited for you guys to be here for our first guest duelist episode.
We would also like to apologize for our release delays. We have a special guest duelist joining us, and with how the duel operates, a lot of everything is kind of unplanned. So even how the story is orchestrated, of course, is first draft and that sort of thing. So being able to work somebody else in or give them a potential character to work with poses some difficulties, especially when it comes to scheduling. Of course, with this, it is something we will be working on in the future in hopes of streamlining this a little bit for potential future duelist guests. The special duelist is Philip Wallace. He is the co-author of Beta, the Scorpion, and the Bull, which you can find on Amazon.com. Also, he will be joining us for our after-duel commentary for the chapters that he is involved with, and we're very excited to have him.
Without further ado, we give you Dueling Pens, The Labyrinth of Minos, Chapter 3, Part 3, written and narrated by Philip Wallace.
We hope you enjoy the show, and we'll see you all in the future.
Soon.
Sometime there, in and of.
Bye!
Bye.
I was so close, Brayden lamented. Now I have to depend on these two gumshoes to set me free. Brayden sighed as he watched Rex try to solve the puzzle box. The maze pieces shuffled, revealing a new maze. New to Martina and Rex, but not so new to Brayden. Now you've reset the whole thing, Brayden howled. He didn't mean to howl. Sure enough, that was the only way to describe it. His disappointment had forced its way back into the world of living, though the results weren't what he had hoped for. He watched Martina's eyes glaze over for just a few moments, and she let out a blood-curdling scream. Did I do that? Brayden questioned himself. If he had, he'd finally had a hope to communicate with the world with the living, and having his soul released from the clutches of the box. However, with the box in the museum's hand, Brayden would have to think fast. The museum would waste no time announcing to the public. Brayden would have less than 48 hours before the news hit the papers, and the killers would know the location of the box. This meant there was limited time before they killed again. Brayden knew what he was in store for if someone killed in the proximity of the box of Minos. He witnessed in horror what happened to the poor girl's phantom as she died. Brayden gulped as the urgency set in. He came back to his surroundings. Martina was being escorted out of the museum. He followed as fast as he could, but moving around as a ghost wasn't as easy as you would think. Sure, you could pass through walls and float a little bit, but whenever you run into a living person, your spirits get muddled. Ever wondered why your girl could go from a grade A nag to a sweetness itself, or see a baby start crying for no reason? That's what happens when phantoms bump into the living. In his hurry to catch up, he sped through a wall and right into the janitor. And by the time he was able to separate himself, Martina was nowhere to be seen. Back to the office. I'm sure one of them will show up soon, Brayden thought, as he floated down the street. It was an easy trek through the rain, since he didn't have to worry about getting wet, but he would give anything to be able to feel the cold drops on his face once again. It took about an hour before Brayden reached the office. The lights were off. The office was empty. He could only wait for their return. The dark emptiness of the office and the thoughts of being dead left him sullen. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't turn the light on. He sat back in the old wooden swivel chair and sighed. It rocked back! Brayden shot up from his seat. That didn't happen before. Could his ability to impact the world of the living tied to his emotions? Hours passed as nights turned into dawn. Brayden still couldn't figure out how he had done it. A sudden click at the unlocking office door ended his long wait. One of them is finally back, he thought. But it wasn't Martina or Demetri that walked through the door. The shadows darted across the man's face as he quickly entered the room, closing the door behind him while slipping his lockpicks back into his pocket. Brayden's fists clenched as the morning light revealed the intruder's identity. His killer was on the trail of the box as well. The culprit ransacked the office like a professional, even finding the hidden wall safe and cracking it in mere moments. They didn't stop until they had found the old letter that Martina had left on the desk, with Demetri's address on it. Oh no, Brayden said. The murderer snatched up the letter and raced out the office. Brayden chased after his killer and caught them right as they got to their car. Brayden passed through the passenger door and sat beside the shady figure as their black Buick roared to life. They sped down the road as the cloud covered swallowed up the morning light. A new storm was about to roll in. You won't get away with this. My family's the only right to that box, and you're just going to get yourself killed like everyone else who tries to have hands at solving it, Brayden said, his anger filling his voice. He should have never agreed to meet with that man, the so-called reporter from the Minos Minute, doing an article on the myths of Minos. He wanted to punch the glasses right off his face, but a load of good that would do now. Brayden caught sight of a very familiar car coming towards them. A beat-up Ford with a familiar detective smoking behind the wheel. It wasn't long before his murderer noticed it as well. He was quick to turn around and pursue the detective. I hope the PI noticed, because wherever he's headed, he's about to have an uninvited guest. Brayden sat quietly thinking about how he could alert the detective when the killer's car slowed down and pulled off the road at the top of the hill. The hill overlooked the entrance of the Minos tomb, a place Brayden was very familiar with. The driver went to the trunk and removed a long rifle box from the back. Taking up position, he adjusted his scope and waited for Demetri to leave the car below. Braden frantically rushed down the hill to Demetri's side, waving his hands in front of him, kicking rocks at him, getting angry and shouting at him. Nothing would work. "Sorry, buddy, I gotta slow you down somehow." Braden put himself in the path of Demetri. Demetri's body was enveloped with pressure, as if he had been submerged. Braden yelled, "Watch out, he's got a gun!" At that moment, Demetri knew exactly where the gunman was positioned. The rest was up to him.
Marty. It's dark, damp, and smells like dirt. Hiding under the bed was not my most brilliant move, but I'd been in a hurry, and it was the first place that caught my eye. That scummy bastard had found me in minutes. An enormous hand ripped me from my hiding spot. I couldn't even remember his face. The only things that stuck out in my memory were his hand and that god-awful canary yellow suit. My head was still hurting from where I'd bashed it on Demetri's bed frame, trying to get out of his grasp. The chloroform probably hadn't helped either. I felt hungover without the benefit of the fun night. Bang! Bang! 2 gunshots rang out, loud but muffled. What in the hell? I turned my head from side to side, trying to hear better, but I couldn't hear much more than muted voices. They sounded male, but I couldn't be sure with the bag over my head. Bang! Another shot went off, and the voices moved away from me. I wish I could see or adequately hear what was happening. I struggled against the rope that bound my hands behind my back. If I could just get my hands free, I could get out of here. Hopefully. I rolled to my side and started to shove my butt through my arms. I wished I was more limber. Maybe if I'd taken ballet like Mama wanted, this would be a whole lot easier right now. But this was no time for regrets. Bang! Oh, come on! I growled into the handkerchief tied snugly around my mouth. Bang! That shot sounded a lot closer. My heart started to beat so loudly that it drowned out everything else. I continued my efforts with more urgency, but not more successfully. Shit. I'm gonna die here. Marty! Marty! Is that you? A familiar voice asked as the bag was removed from my head. Demetri Bolton had come to my rescue. He removed the gag. Demetri, you have no idea how happy I am to see you, I said. You sure got a nose for trouble, he said as he untied my hands and helped me to my feet. It's a gift, I said with a shrug. There's no time for small talk. We gotta move, he said, grabbing my hand and pulling me behind him. I tried to keep up, but I was still pretty out of it. Probably had a concussion to boot. What's going on? I asked. Too much to go over at the moment, he said, pushing me up against the wall. I recognized this place. It was the old mine. I'm gonna go first. I'll give a sharp whistle if it's safe. When you hear that whistle, you run for the tree line like the devil himself is nipping at your heels. You got me? The car is way down the hill. If you hear gunfire, you go back down the mine. Do you understand me? I'll come for you as soon as I can. Until then, you stay out of sight. I nodded and watched as he darted into the rain. His steps were loud. I could hear the mud sucking around his boots. I readied myself to run as soon as he whistled, but an unmistakable bang came first. Bang! Bang! I turned and fled back into the mine. I needed to find somewhere safe that wasn't too far from the opening. I didn't want to get lost down here. They might never find me, but I didn't want to be found too easily either.
Demetri. Time had slowed down. There was a jolt to my mind, like someone had screamed at me but from behind a wall. It snapped my attention to the top of a nearby hill, a man and a rifle. I had just enough time to dive into the mud before a gunshot rang out. I pointed Fiona towards my would-be killer and loosed a shot. Dead men don't move. I was on my feet and running towards the entrance to the mine on instinct. The figure I had seen was looking at the hill and back at me, a man dressed in a dark suit and a coat. He dropped his umbrella. It was an ambush. Should have known better. Goddamn cultists. I pointed Fiona towards the man on the hill and fired again, trying to keep him from getting a bead on me. I locked my eyes back on the mine entrance and sprinted for everything I was worth. I saw M reach into his coat. Before he got a chance to pull his piece, I fired 2 more shots. I watched as my shots ricocheted off the walls of the mine and saw a flash of yellow disappearing deep into the dark. I'm not too proud to say I'm not a great shot when on the move, but it helps to spook whoever I'm charging at like a madman. And it worked. I watched as the man in black ducked down and scrambled around the side of the mine looking for cover. I pushed for the entrance. I needed cover. The mud was slowing me down, but I thought I'd bought myself enough time. The man in black was nowhere to be seen. I glanced up at the hilltop and saw the rifleman settling in for another shot. I whipped Fiona up and pumped another at him just before skidding to a halt inside the mine. That's when I saw the kid. Thank God she was okay. I got her unbound and laid out the plan for her. After a quick reload, I poked my head outside. The rifleman wasn't on the hill. This just got a lot more difficult. Guess he knew the rule too. After a deep breath, I slipped quickly out, hugging the wall and ducking my head. Hard to see a damn thing with the rain like it is, but that made me a harder target too. 2 shots were too close. I heard them smack into the rock face right behind me and pressed forward. I had a general idea where they came from and put a tree between me and the shooter. It sounded like a pistol. Probably M, I thought. That's when I got another jolt in my head, that muted screaming. It brought my attention left and up the hill. Not too far off, the rifleman was trotting down the hill, trying to flank me. Dirty bastard, I thought as I drew sights on him and fired. It caught him, spun him around and down as he cried out in pain, rolling down the hill a ways. I lost sight of him through the brush. One down, hopefully. I think he's dead, I called out, peering from behind the tree trunk towards where I thought M was hiding. May want to see to him, or don't the Seekers care for the brothers anymore? Goddamn loony fanatics. I kept my head low, waiting for a sign. The only fanatic here is you, dick, a voice called back to me, sounded young. Some punk full of spit and vinegar. A shot splintered the tree I was ducking behind. I hugged the tree and peeked towards where the shot came from. Sneaky bastard had the same idea I did. I aimed and fired, spitting splinters of wood at him. My hole was bigger. Jesus Christ! I heard him call out in surprise. That's right, kid. My Fiona's a big girl. She don't mess around, I thought as I scrambled forward and behind a larger rock. Well, Em, you wanted to talk. Though I don't think our Lord and Savior would look too fondly on you mistreating that poor girl. Or, gunning down some old man. I called out, taking more quick peeks from behind my new position. I'm not M, you moron, he shouted back. He fired another shot into my tree to press the point. Why are you here with the kid then? I called back, putting another large hole in his tree. The woman? She was here when I got here, with the man in yellow. The man in yellow? I didn't see any... Wait. That flash of yellow. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I just sent the kid into the mine, where the man in yellow was. How can things continuously go from bad to worse every time I turn around? I shook my head. What's with your friend with the rifle? Doesn't seem to me like you're playing me straight here. I have no idea who that is. Now stop shooting at me. He fired another shot, again pressing the point. I thought for a moment on it. The man had seemed confused when the shooting started, and he did only try to draw on me because I had my gun pointed at him, right? It was possible, but it would be foolish of me if I believed him. Too much to question out here. Not enough answers. Then why the hell are you out here? I shouted back. M sent me. Told me to meet someone here, to show them what I found, was his response. What he found? Why meet out here then? Any place in Minos would have done well. Could have told me and been on our merry way. What then? I stood slowly and peeked my head from around the tree. I saw the punk standing as well, easing his way from behind the tree, his hands raised. Minos' tomb! Minos' tomb! There's something you need to see. Welcome to Dueling Pens!
I'm Sammy Jo.
And I'm Andy. And joining us today is our guest duelist, Philip Wallace.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here. It was fun to be on the. It was fun to be on your show. I enjoyed writing for you, and hope you enjoyed the curveballs that I threw.
Yep. The whole ghost aspect of the thing, and we had been working with the whole supernatural aspect, but we haven't brought in the actual supernatural aspect. Like I was kind of loosely alluding to it with like the cult and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we now have a ghost that is tied to the box, and the fact that the box now has actual
mechanics,
properties. Yes.
Yeah.
There's actual stuff that the box does and is capable of, or that we know of, is rather interesting. I do like the fact that you brought Braden back. I was real like sad when Sammy Jo killed him, because I had big plans for that guy.
I was just excited because you set him up for M, and then I read it before you did, and I got to run downstairs and be like, you get to write M.
I didn't. I had set him up to write M. Though I mean, with the whole duel aspect, you can do whatever you want with it as long as it progresses the story and that sort of thing. And
Well, and the point is to throw some curveballs.
yeah. And the fact that instead of going with the M character that I was setting him up for, he decided to take a left turn and run off into the horizon. There was that was interesting. It definitely is going to give me some different mechanics to work with inside the story in terms of how to work Braden in, since he can't really be interacted with outside of by what were you doing with like his emotions.
His emotions could do things, and got that from Ghost. You know how Patrick Swayze character could eventually start doing things when he focused his emotions on things. Thought that was it's a neat concept originally, and why mess with a good thing? And I think it worked out pretty well.
No,
it
definitely works. Trying to describe how it affects, like for instance, him trying to get Demetri's attention.
Yeah.
Trying to describe how that affects Demetri itself was a bit of a challenge, I think.
Oh, definitely was for me. Coming up with it initially I just thought that just pressure, the fact that two souls or two entities are inhabiting the same space made it difficult for either one to do anything. So I thought that was a good idea that you could use to help flesh him out even more when you use the character later.
Yeah. I also liked how the whole how Braden is specifically tied to the box.
Stuck with the box.
And I guess, what was it, the last sacrifice is tied to the box, or
Right.
the most recent thing killed next to the
Right.
box.
It's basically when
tied to it.
the idea is when something dies within the proximity of the box. I didn't discuss how far that was, but then it would eat the previous soul. Yeah.
Well, and that honestly also leads into another interesting mechanic, because the fact that whatever the box is, I mean, its power source, it's powered by the souls it consumes.
Sure.
So it would make sense that the cult sacrificing people, and Braden mentioning how he saw the other spirit getting kind of
Consumed,
disintegrated, that sort of thing. I thought that was real interesting. The fact that it's got a power source, which means it's got to do something. So I thought that was really interesting.
Glad you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It was fun.
This
How was it for you jumping into the middle of a story? Especially
It was odd, since I've written things before, and trying to jump in the middle with everybody doing. That's why I kind of didn't want to play with M, because it felt not necessarily a trap, but it felt a little forced, and so I had some ideas for M, and it just felt like there was a little background of some sort that was missing, and so I didn't know exactly, I could figure out who M was and what they would kind of say, but without a little more background, which I thought that bringing in the description of the box and Braden's killer and that it helped flush out some things so that the story could progress with a little more insight into what's going on.
Yeah, no, and that definitely helped for certain, because, for instance, Braden's family has had the box. Braden thinks the box is his specifically.
Yep.
Because it belongs to his family, which leads us to another avenue that we could traverse in terms of what the Etsons
mean for Minos.
Their ties to the Labyrinth. How involved are they specifically in, I don't know, say with the cult perchance? I mean, there's any number of things you can take into account for that. It definitely opens up a whole can of worms there that I'd like to sift through a little bit.
And maybe we could see Cynthia again.
Cynthia Caldwell, bane of my existence. Keep throwing her at me.
You threw her at me first.
Whoa.
This is very true.
Whoa. Okay, so I meant her to be kind of a slough character a little bit. not that we wouldn't see her again when I originally had her, but like you have to bring in the rich well-to-dos and all that other nonsense, you know, the hoity-toity types, and especially in like a Lovecraft noir type, you know, you got to have those debutantes. And so I kind of wanted to bring her in, but I didn't want her to be like too main of a character. I was more wanting to focus on Braden and Athena specifically, and just have this be like a crazy ex-girlfriend type of thing. And then you kind of kept bringing her back, and then you know, it's possible that she was the one that murdered Braden, and or the fact that the murderer could be hired by her to kill Braden and now to take Demetri out for all those things. We don't know. But it's the gift that keeps on giving. Cynthia.
It'll be fun to watch how everything unfolds.
Yeah.
And what the next step in the story is. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys had me, and I'd love to do it again. It's really great.
Well, with the whole guest duelist thing, that is something we plan to do more of as the story progresses. And this go around was a little bit more of a trial run.
Sure.
You know, first time doing everything, and thankfully you were more than willing to help us out with that, because we learned a lot during this, especially when it came to like, you know, what was that, scheduling conflicts and that sort of thing. Because it's a lot easier with me and Sammy here, because you know we live together mostly.
Work gets in the way of a lot of things. You know, I totally understand that. So, with Dueling Pens, I was just really curious. Are you guys? How long do you think the story's gonna go? Do you have a cutoff point, or are you just gonna go until you feel it's done? Like,
well, because there's no planning with this, because everything is first draft and off the cuff. I think it just is gonna go until it's like, oh, and we're done, until somebody randomly ends it, and then it'll be on to the next thing.
Okay, okay, yeah. I guess with writing, the only thing I'd be worried about, and this is, you know, just my experience thing, is you got to watch out for those, and I've already had one, those dream sequence endings, or the everybody dies kind of thing.
Yeah.
Though sometimes everybody dies can be okay, as long as it's like as long as it's done right, you know.
Yeah.
Big finale, box opens, eats everybody. I don't know, you know.
Well, this is Lovecraftian, so it's not going to end well.
Yeah, like, I don't know. It could end any number of ways. I have a few different ideas of how I'd like to end it. And personally, I think I've mentioned this before, I haven't really read much Lovecraft. Like, I'm familiar with Lovecraft as most people are, just because of, you know, media.
Do you like architecture?
Yes.
Well, then you like Lovecraft, because he loves his architecture.
Yeah, he does. Okay.
Trust me, 100%. You will get a description of all the buildings.
Okay. Well, I'll have to look into that. Like, I know Lovecraft from like media, and I've played a few games that have been based off of his writings.
It's a good genre. It honestly is.
Well, he's like isn't he like supposed to be like the grandfather of like, oh god, like horror, not like horror, but there's a specific genre that he spawned that created pretty much a majority of the like monster-y, unknown type horrors that we, you know, consume today.
And even think about it. Even in one of the most popular MMORPGs, World of Warcraft, the old gods. Look at all their names.
Yeah.
Like they're 100%. Like having to do with type of Lovecraft, and half of them have tentacles, you know, tentacle faces, tentacle arms,
no,
thing.
And if you think about it, like before they made like Archimon, you know, something you could fight, he was some big bad demon behind the scenes. I think his name was Archimon. Oh, okay. The big bad demon that was using the orcs to invade the world originally.
Oh yeah.
He was some big bad behind the scenes, and then, you know, World of Warcraft made him touchable, whereas before he was just some kind of omnipresent evil that was looming over the world, you know. And I find that a really cool idea, because a lot, from what I understand, because I've been researching Lovecraft a little bit, a lot of his writings had to deal with more of like existential crises type things, of like coming to terms with your own humanity and kind of how insignificant you are as a human being, and how big and scary the universe actually is, you know. And after doing some research, I think I'm going to be trying to lean a little bit more heavily into something like that. Though I don't know, it could be interesting how we go with that sort of thing.
I think it's been a good challenge just because you and I are both fantasy writers mostly.
Yes.
So we didn't even pick a genre to start with that we were actually like good at.
No. Good
Right.
at, comfortable
It's
with.
the best place to start. Do something you're both not comfortable with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I mean, who doesn't like a good murder mystery type of thing going on?
Mhm.
And you know, noir is always kind of cool. It's always got that kind of nostalgia feel to it, you know.
Mhm.
Like there's so many great things happened with like the noir genre. So
I know I've been making you watch a lot of old
yeah,
film noir.
yeah, I got to check into it. Was it the Maltese Falcon? I think is next on my list.
Mm-hmm.
That actually came recommended by you and my dad as well. So.
And so is Humphrey Bogart.
Humphrey Bogart, yeah. Anyways,
And did you have any challenges this go around with this chapter?
you know, the more we write, like, I mean, and you've mentioned this before, it's easier to start a story than it is to keep it trucking through the middle. And I'm starting to find difficulties keeping it trucking through the middle. Like, I don't know how many times I had to stop and go, I mean, is this plausible? Am I opening up too many doors with this sort of thing? Do I need to, you know, like try to consolidate things and keep it to a baseline story, or can I still branch out and that sort of thing? Because I don't want to open it up so much that we're going to be writing this until, you know, the end of time. You know, I want to have a definite start, middle, finish to the story. Not to say we couldn't keep writing. I mean, potentially we could, but I mean, that would get monotonous and it would drone on and on.
Well, yeah.
So-
And eventually we would just be praying that both of our characters died.
So, yeah, right?
I think I'll hang out with Brayden next to the box.
Hey,
Oh
there
wait,
you- there you go.
the box eats you. Can't do that.
We'll get to see Braden be eaten, and then
Why? What? Why?
What?
Why would you do
What?
that?
I don't
Why?
know. I don't know.
Why?
I don't know.
Why would you do that? He's such a nice guy.
He seems like a really
He's
nice fellow.
very
though,
helpful.
Though he has the box, and he had already opened 2 of the gates, which then, you know, Marty and her friend promptly closed, and Braden had freaked out about.
I did think that was really good because my character was like, ooh, look, we made things happen with the box. And you totally were like, yeah, you just took it right back to the beginning. Well done.
Yeah, but you know, if Brayden ever learns to communicate with everybody, maybe he can help and get it back to where it was, and
Oh, we have to get
point
like
the-
a Ouija board in
point
there.
the characters in the right direction, maybe.
Okay, sorry, I just had a bunch of ideas go off in my head all at once. And
Idea explosion.
yeah, so much fun. Yes, Braden. Ooh, Braden's gonna be fun.
See,
Go start cool.
I think the hardest part for me was that since I got kidnapped, like I didn't want, you know, my character is kind of, she's a teenager and stuff, and it's like I couldn't really
Plus, she was
say.
22.
Oh well, 22, whatever. She's young.
She's young.
She's young.
Yeah.
20 teen.
20
teen. You know, so I couldn't really I didn't want to write her out of the situation and, you know, make her a Mary Sue, but I wanted her to at least try to free herself. But then I had to bring you in because she wasn't going to get out of that by herself.
Right. Well, see, and that's the whole thing, is that like some of the stuff is getting a little, I don't know.
Well, I honestly thought that giving Demetri a chance to save Marty develops their chemistry better. You know, and you know, and that's you know, that she doesn't see him as a. Granted, I know she talked about how he's like, oh, I'm going to be a private eye and we're going to get famous, and it's bring back to him to his glory days. But she does believe that he might be past his glory days. At least that's the impression I got.
Yeah.
And where she would take over the reins, you know. So I think that maybe this gives her an idea of that, well, maybe he still got it where got's what it takes, you know, got it where it counts, yeah.
Well, see, and I could see that a little bit, but like I've mentioned before in the writings, is Demetri sees her as she's a kid, you know, she's you know, she's firing from the hip, she's doing what she wants, she's stubborn, she's headstrong, and she sees Demetri kind of as a stepping stone. What's that?
No, my brain found ideas. I was like, you know, how about this would be a good one, is that you had a flashback with Demetri on that case that you talked about. Now he was maybe at one point in time young
young
Petra
and
said shooting from the hip.
yeah,
That would be a good chapter.
I mean, it's
All the things. All the things.
but she sees him more as a stepping stone, from what I've read, in order to find her sister. And
Yeah,
we've
she's-
deviated from that pretty good. But I mean, we're only in chapter 3 now.
We're only in chapter 3, so we
Chapter
haven't
4.
really like. There's been a lot going on with the box, but I mean, ultimately, Marty is absolutely motivated by finding her sister, and she wants to do whatever it takes to make Demetri like great again, so that she can find her sister, because she thinks that pulling him out of whatever like downward spiral that he's in, that this is the greatest detective she's ever heard about in her city, and so she needs him, but she needs him to get his shit together. So she's like working that like nobody's business to the best of her ability, which isn't that great because again she's like 22 and doesn't know that much.
Yeah, no, I could see that. I suppose. I mean, it's pretty interesting. And there's so many different things that we can do with it. And, honestly, bringing in a fresh duelist adds a little extra spice and definitely gives us more to play with and different avenues to explore too. So
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
definitely. I definitely enjoyed having you write in there. So
It spices things up, and because sometimes it can get I can only do so much to him and he can only do so much to me, but you throw somebody else in and it can really mess up the whole works, which is great.
oh yeah, no, it's
Sniper
gonna
from
be-
the hill.
yeah.
You know.
So I think that's pretty cool. Thank you for joining us for this After the
You're
Duel
welcome.
chat.
Yes, it was wonderful having you
It was
on.
definitely
was
fun
fun.
having you write in and screw with my plans and bring back my more favorite character that I really wanted to be a favorite character but wasn't, but now can potentially be again. Mwahaha, Phoenix Rises. Anyways, this is Philip Wallace. You can find his book Beta, The Scorpion and the Bull, co-authored by Tyler Anderson, but you can find that on Amazon.
It's a sci-fi adventure.
It's a sci-fi. Isn't it like a cyberpunk type thing going on?
Kinda.
Shadowrun.
Shadowrunny.
Shadowrunny,
Cyberpunky.
So,
There's-
I read it. I mean, it's pretty good.
It's a long time ago that it came out.
Yeah.
I have half of a second one written, but it's got put on a back shelf for a while. But yeah, no.
Mhm.
Maybe this will inspire me.
Maybe. We'll get you up and running. That's the whole point of this. That's why it's a creative writing exercise to get the juices flowing, get the writing wheels spinning, and that's one of the reasons why we started doing this, is because I've had writer's block for too long, and became a decent idea to kind of get the juices flowing for me. And I know Sammy's been enjoying this, and so maybe
Well, it
it'll-
gives me ideas for my other stuff that I'm working on too. So
All right.
Well, again, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, and feel free to give me a jingle to do it again sometime.
all right,
Definitely a pleasure. All right. Well,
we'll see you guys later.
have a nice day.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this production,
Remember to like and subscribe,
and don't forget to follow us on social media.
which you can find linked in our bio
We'll see you next time.
on Dueling Pens.
Bum, bum, bum.
I can't believe you left me in the room with that woman.